Okay. Good morning, everyone. This is Ron. Sunday morning. Beautiful morning out. Uh, hope you had a good day yesterday. And we'll see if we have any questions. Start off, see if we have any questions. On yesterday, I know Pastor talked about Jonah, and what we looked at in Jonah was Jonah was about us, the man who is seeking truth, delivering a message, and being prepared to deliver that message, and being reluctant to speak to certain groups or certain people, and the message there was we do not have that right to do so. One of the things I really liked about, I loved about the lesson was it almost sounds like instructions to me. It almost sounds like when Jesus was preparing his disciples to go out. So I see it that way. I see everything that we talk about as a measurement to kind of show us where we are. And that one speaks to me as to say, you guys are on the right path, and you're closer to being the voice of the mackerel than you actually realize, and literally and spiritually. Uh, any questions about that? I did not get to hear it its in entirety, so I missed the probably last 10 minutes of it. But any questions about that or anything else that was said on yesterday?
Yeah, good morning, Ron.
Yes, sir. Hey, George, how are you today,
Morning,
man?
everybody. Yeah, I just wanted to respond in reference to something that was said yesterday in terms of just the oneness that we all are. And I know that, it might have been mentioned before in terms of I am because we are. And I believe that the energy and the spirit of us coming into this wisdom and knowledge, we can truly appreciate the oneness that we are. And so again, I really just wanted to share that as something Pastor was mentioned, that we are not separated. We all are one, and all of us bring energy and our love to what we desire to become. So I just wanted to share that thought in reference to the I amness that we all are and the oneness that we all are. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, George. That's a good point. Very good point. And if
I,
go ahead, Pastor. I'm sorry.
yeah, I wanted to. Well, yesterday, of course, we spoke about Jonah and how he didn't want to go to Nineveh, and we understood that from his perspective, from not from his perspective, from the Creator's perspective, because let's keep in mind that the Creator inspired men to write stories about who we are, but do it in the form that would be easier to remember. The mindset of the Semite people, mindset of all indigenous people, matter of fact, is to put their history in stories and to pass it from generation to generation. The story that we talked about, and everything that we have been talking about, actually predates the writing of the Bible. All of these stories can be found in the writings of the Cushites. Yeah, but every one of them has a meaning, and every one of them points to the human in this earth becoming a Hebrew or becoming Elohim. Just like the Hebrew is a river crosser, meaning that has made up a decision to cross from this material life being a priority to prioritizing spiritual essence of his being. And what came to me in regards to that, but several things, but one in particular that came to me is we as indigenous people had a primary mindset of being spiritual, and the Gentiles didn't. The mindset of the Gentiles was to see with their eyes and not their eye. And I do believe that this was purposely done as well. And as a result of these two bodies of thought, we end up with a creation of a macro understanding from the indigenous, from the African in particular, to a macro with the vision of the eyes as opposed to the eye. And the macro with the vision from the eyes is in conflict with the vision from the eye. And what we have seen in regards to that is the necessity of understanding the scriptures, and in doing so, beginning to introduce to the Gentile the meaning of these scriptures, the spiritual meaning, the message, the hidden message that's in these scriptures or these writings. And what we are doing when we talk to, for example, let me give you an example. When we talk to the people in California, what we are doing, we are actually inundating the created mindset of the macro with the mindset of the Semite, or the spiritual mindset that everyone is supposed to embrace. And in order for humanity to become truly Elohim, having that spiritual experience, physical experience, this shift in this created macro has to take place. And the Creator is not going to make that shift. It is up to us to make that shift, and that is the reason we cannot go to Joppa. We have to go to Nineveh. We have to go to the place where the fish god is being is being worshipped. We have to go to the place where the fish is seen as a god because it never sleeps, it never closes its eyes, and bring that to a place of understanding that this fish is simply a fish and not our Creator. In addition to that, when we look at this whole concept of how men worship now, especially in Christianity, the idea of coming together on Sunday, without being honest about where the whole concept of Sunday came from. The Romans worshipped the sun god, and they wanted to please Constantine, and they moved the day of worship, the day of the holy day. They made it the sun day in honor of the sun, and because of the birth of the sun during the winter solstice, the birth date for Jesus was set coincide with the winter solstice. So everything that has been done in regards to the scripture has been based upon the mindset of the European or the Gentile mindset. It has not been understood from the original author's perspective. And because of that shift in perspective, it has shifted the entire mindset of the world. And now it is incumbent upon us to understand something. When we look at the mindset of the world, we see a mindset that embraces money and politics as being power, and they are fueled by Christianity in particular, and Judaism and Islam also, but not as much as Christianity is in influence. And the understanding from this is warped, because your material acquisitions have absolutely nothing to do with the true nature of our power. When we look at the African, we see a mindset of spiritual royalty, not royalty in terms of superiority that we've gotten from Europe, but royalty in terms of being a gatekeeper for humanity, a spiritual conduit through which humanity receives its spiritual nourishment. So the idea of the mindset that's been created and the mindset that has always existed, when these mindsets clash, it always brings a problem. And the clashing of these mindsets were instituted from the beginning so that we would be able to create in the image and likeness of Elohim. When we talk about the African being spiritual more so than anyone on the earth, when we look at that or take a deep dive into that, we are actually seeing the loving kindness, the quickness to forgive, the mercy that is shown. We see those when we take a deep dive, but do we know what this is speaking to? Have we embraced what it's speaking to? When we talk about creating an image and likeness, we are not talking about creating a physical body with different types of skin covering the structures of the body. We are talking about the image and likeness being the characteristics of our Creator. In other words, when we create in this earth an image and likeness, then the ones who brought into existence this mindset of might makes right, and our eyes are the only truth teller. When we see that, what are we saying? When we create in our image and likeness, then the seeing with the eyes begins to shift, and seeing with the eye begins to become priority. And when that happens, we will see that everyone, not individually, but collectively, every group of people will embrace the reality, the necessity of being continuously forgiven, regardless of what has taken place, and having showing continuous mercy and embracing everyone with loving kindness. When that's the image, of course there are other characteristics, but these are primary. This is the primary image of the likeness of our Creator, and that's the image and likeness that we have to create in, and not think that when people talk about the browning of America, we see that differently. The browning of America is simply a shift in mindset, and who cares what your skin tones look like? What matters is what your soul looks like. what your mind looks like. Does your soul influence your mind? Has your soul transformed your mind? That transformation of the mind by the soul is the image and likeness. And so it does. The exterior is the thing that we have focused on, and the interior is the thing that we have for too long neglected. So when we talk about, when we ask someone, especially of European descent, and would you exchange places with me, meaning that you can have all your wealth, you can have everything that you have accumulated, but would you change places with me in terms of you being the color that I am and me being the color that you are? And you get silence, or you get, well, I don't know about that, or you get he and hard about it, but you don't get clear answers. And the reason is because everything that's considered good is based on what you look like and not who you really are, not even who you were created to be. So this whole conversation yesterday about Jonah was hopefully an amplification of the things that I'm talking about now. This whole idea of understanding that whether we're talking about Jonah or Abraham at the entrance to his tent, whether we're talking about Isaac or Jacob, we're not talking about physical individual people. We are talking about spiritual concepts that were brought in to existence for the express purpose of guiding us to the place of beginning, the place where everything started. And when we return to beginning, we don't return to a barren earth. When we talk about returning to beginning, we are talking about returning to the spiritual essence of our being. We're not talking about going back in the mother's womb. We're talking about returning to our birthplace. And our birthplace is not a physical conception. It is a spiritual thought. So our existence is owed to Ensof and the thoughts that brought us to this place where we are now. And all thoughts are actually energy forces that needs to be, as we talked about yesterday, organized in a divine way by the divine. And when we do that, that is created in the image and likeness of the essence of the one who created us. I'm done, unless there are questions or comments. Ron, if you're talking.
Yeah, I'm okay. Just give me some room. Thank you, Pastor. Any other questions or comments about anything, guys? Were there something else that may have grabbed your attention?
Good morning. This is Ramel.
Hey, Ramel.
So then, what we're talking about with Jacob, is this our prodigal journey? Our life experience, is that a prodigal journey for us?
Everything is our journey. Regardless of what in the book, it is indeed our journey.
Okay. I can see that.
The book was written as a spiritual roadmap. It is a global map for those who embrace the spiritual journey. Whether it is the Navajo or whether it is the Japanese or the African, it doesn't matter. It's a spiritual journey. And the book speaks to that. But ask yourself this question. How is it that indigenous people, whether it's the Aborigines in Australia or the Aztecs in what's now Mexico, ask yourself this: how is it that they were able to embrace and live by the same principles that we are talking about that has its origin in Africa? These written principles. How is it that they were doing that and have not read the scrolls? It's because the principles are engraved in our hearts. And we have not lost our connection with that. And the truth of our not lost our connection with that is seen with the quickness to forgive, with us not having an affinity for violence. We are not the ones who want revenge on anyone. The transformation to me is the greatest revenge, and that transforming brings them to a place of consciousness where there is an awareness of the ugly nature of what they have done. They meaning those who are primarily, not totally, but primarily of European derivation. I'm done.
Mel, does that help?
Tremendously. That makes
Okay.
it resonates greatly. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Morning. This is Barbara.
Come on.
Jonah, in the book of Jonah, the story talks about Jonah having been expelled from the big fish, preached for 40 days in Nineveh. And Nineveh, 40 days sort of represents a period of trial and testing, judgment, and then also new growth, new opportunities, a new period of time, something new, a new beginning in a sense. And so the people from the story changed. They were led by their king who said, look, okay, let's put on sackcloth, ash, blah, blah, and perhaps this God will spare us, will deliver us, will not destroy us. So internally then, my question is, do we use these experiences of trial or challenge or judgment to do that internal review of, okay, what's going on? Why is this going on? And then what do I need to do to change, to get out of this? Do we? Because that's what it is all about. It's about that internal transformation. Do we let challenges internally drive our quote unquote our minds toward being spiritually led, or do we just simply let that trial become something that causes us to increase our bitterness, increase our discontent, increase our judgmental attitudes toward others? So my question is, what do the trials do for us internally?
The trials, that the period of which you speak, is not so much a trial to oppress as it is a trial of opportunity. a trial of opportunity to see how we are fearfully and wonderfully made. If we neglect to embrace the trials for what they are, understanding that the trials that we go through, the quandaries that we find ourselves in, are there, as you said, to drive us to a tight space. They push us in the corner. And once we embrace them, we are no longer in the corner. We begin to come out of that corner, because the purpose of them is to prick our minds, to prick our souls, to move us to a place where we transform from within as opposed to being transformed from without. When we get bitter, that transformation that we are going through is an external transformation. The catalyst for it is an external action that drives us to be bitter. Remember when we got rid of, when we walked away from, when we ceased to embrace the bitterness that we have, and every time that we saw an African male in particular, or the females of African origin being killed by policemen, or being killed with no one being held to account for it. When we saw that, and we were like, here we go again. When is this going to stop? That is a form of bitterness. And that begins to be the catalyst that shapes how we feel, which means that it is damaging us internally. When we see these casualties, when we see the murders taking place, and we look at them and see that the ones who are allowing this to be, who are the cheerleaders for what's going on, when we see them as being guided, controlled by a nature that only barbarians have, and that's a nature of greed and hatred, because you don't look like me. When we see that, then we see our obligation to change that mindset. And you don't change the mindset by arguing. Excuse me. We change the mindset by what we put in the macro, the righteousness, the loving kindness, the remembrance of what happened, but the approach to change it is different than what it was when we expressed that bitterness. Thank you. I hope that helps, Power.
It does. All of it everything is about, I guess, me changing me. And that's me changing me from the inside out rather than, and the inside out is with the inside, the internal eye, the all-seeing eye, internal eye, the eye, rather than the eyes. So thank you, that does help.
In addition to that, also, when we change internally, when we desire this change, when we put forth every effort to make this change, we're also changing those around us. Think about when we, as a group, came together. The 13 of us, when we came together. Think about that. When we came together, we were not on the same page. We were searching for the page that we were supposed to be on, and here we are, over these many years, and we are in the same place, which means that not only did we change ourselves internally, but we were able to influence a change in each other, and we are continually doing that. And that is the thing that recognizes the differences in our thoughts or the differences in how we approach, but yet it simultaneously recognizes the unicity of us all. It recognizes that the oneness of all of us. When we talk about being able to teach, and but the one who is leading the discussion has to walk away or has to move end the discussion on their part, others can pick it up and carry it. That's because we are on the same page. That speaks to the unicity of our being, and it is an example of what humanity is supposed to look like. And again, when we talk about look like, we are not talking about physical attributes. We are talking about spiritual attributes. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Questions or comments?
I have a question.
Okay.
As far as Jonah being thrown off of the boat with that crew, how does that apply to us today?
When it says that Jonah instructed them to throw him overboard. Excuse me. When we make an effort to run away from the truth of what we are supposed to be doing, we find ourselves in the company of those who have no inkling as to who they are. We find ourselves in the midst of, religious settings. The boat, the crew on that boat was a crew that was facilitating a move away from the spiritual journey that Jonah was given. That's what religion has done. It has moved us from the spiritual journey, and we have embarked, or we did rather embark on a journey that was guided and influenced by this material world. So what happened in essence is when we started asking questions, because so many things no longer made sense, and some of the things never made sense, we just didn't talk about them. When we started seeing that, it is at that point that we essentially said, throw us overboard. We were thrown overboard, meaning that we could no longer be in the midst of these religious teachings. The biggest portion of it is we could no longer teach the things that we did not believe was true. We could no longer teach the things that we're asking questions about, and we're not receiving answers. So, in our particular case, Christianity was the boat, and we are the Jonah who Christianity threw overboard. If you don't quite get that, then let me suggest in a rhetorical way that you have a conversation about what you know the truth to be with anyone who is caught up in Christianity, and see if they don't move away from you, which means they are throwing you overboard. Does that make sense, Evelyn?
Yes.
Thank you.
I have one more question. What was his purpose for going to Nineveh again? Nineveh. Yes.
He was being sent to Nineveh to tell them that the city would be destroyed because of their wrongdoing. And And he did not want to do that. He did not feel like he should do that. No differently than some of us have had the feeling that there's no point in us talking to white folk about what they did to us. They don't care. I'm not going to do it. It doesn't. They're not going to change. That's what Jonah was sent to Nineveh to do, to speak to them, and when they changed their ways, remember, they repented. The king repented, sackcloth, which means that the whole city repented, and as a result of that, the city was spared. Don't get upset. We cannot afford to get upset when people who we are speaking to and about changes. But we cannot ridicule, we cannot denigrate and expect the things that we teach, but we put in the macro to resonate with them. And the reason it's so difficult sometimes for it to resonate is because the resonance of it has been blocked. It's been blocked by the denigrating things that we say when we speak concerning the enslavers. And when I say enslavers, I'm not just talking about those with physical chains. I'm talking about today's enslavers as well. When we speak disparagingly about them, that confuses the flow, and that in itself becomes a hindrance to the infusion of the energy that transforms the energy of hatred and that transforms the energy that breeds violence, transforms the greedy nature. Does that make sense?
Yes, I'm understanding what you're saying. Yes, it makes sense.
Okay.
I realize with this journey, you have to have patience. And again, what we talked about earlier, someone had mentioned, I think it was George, we're one. And so I guess because things are moving so fast, technology make us move so fast, we want things done we want things done now. So as I grow, each day I realize, each moment I realize you have to have patience on this journey, and you have to remember that you're not alone, you're one, and things are getting done. I know that. But yeah, that's all I want.
Evelyn, and to the rest of you guys, what we find out is fast is slow and slow is fast, meaning that everything, we want it now, but we want it now in our way. When we say we're not going to shape it, to say I want it now is shaping it. What does now look like to you? Because if now looks like looks different than what is going to be, what is happening rather, because it has already changed. The manifestations are here as we speak. Our desire for I want it right now means that our expectations subconsciously are to see it with our eyes as opposed to the eye. We want to experience it externally as opposed to having the internal experience. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. There's an addendum to that as well. One of the biggest hindrances is excuse me. We talk about a journey. We talk about flowing in the river, and we talk about the guidance that that we receive from the light, from the energy forces from the divine. We talk about that guidance in this river that continuously flows. But when we hit a snag in the river, or when we go across a rock or boulder in the river, and it slows us down, or it stops us in our tracks, we have a tendency to say why, and to focus on the boulder as opposed to keeping our eye on the river that's flowing. When we keep our focus on the river, the boulder doesn't move, but we are moved beyond the boulder. The circumstances doesn't necessarily change, but we rise above the circumstances. It's like the neighbor who says, raises the question and says, why is your grass greener than mine? So what would your response be to that? I don't know. Or the way I treat the grass? The response, why is your grass greener than mine? My grass is not greener than yours. Yours is not green. Could it be because you want your grass to be greener than mine, and I simply want my grass to be green, period? This is not a competition, is what I'm trying to say. Your change is not going to look like mine. If you keep your eye on my grass being green, you never see yours when it does turn green. You are the hindrance. When we begin to compare what others are saying or doing to what we are accustomed to, we become our own hindrance. When we have a primary focus on this material world and what it offers, when we are focused on that, that becomes a hindrance to our being in this continuous flow. When at Greatness Faith, one of the first things we did was to get rid of all auxiliaries, because auxiliaries blind you. These organizations pull our focus away from what's real, and we get caught up in money raising, and we get caught up in who has the better building. We get caught up in whose choir sings the best, or who is more melodious than the other person on the choir, that kind of thing. We get all caught up in those things, and every one of them pulls our focus away from the journey that we're on. And what happens is we revert to what we were in our minds, when it's a clear understanding that when you revert, it's like a dog returning to his vomit. When we revert, we go back to nothingness, because there is nothing to go back to once you are on this journey. You don't have the right to put your hand to the plow and look back, because you will have crooked roads, and you will have overlapping roads, and your roads will be so crooked and so overlapping until you won't be able to discern which road you should be placing the seed. So you end up with a lot of confusion, and there is no space for you to move in an orderly manner through that space that has been plowed. Any questions about that or the acceptable example? Comment?
Yes, I have a comment. What keeps me in the now is because there are times when my mind do wander. I start thinking about things that I'm waiting for, so to speak, things that I want to happen. But what brings me back to the center or back to balance is I have to tell myself, come back. Don't go there. You have to bring yourself back. Stay where you are. Live in the present, in the moment. And I had to let go social media because that world will mess your mind up. It will have you thinking all kinds of things that's not true, and it can be confusing. So I had to let a lot of that go and realize that, again, like we teach on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, stay in the now, because really that stuff doesn't exist. What exists is where you are and who you are at that time. So thank you for what you just told us. I appreciate it.
Thank you. When we take our eye off of the journey, when we allow distractions to control us, all kinds of things come to our mind. And it is no different than driving with your eyes closed. If you drive with your eyes closed, you are going to run into obstacles, and some of them will damage you badly. Some of them will simply bruise you. Some of them will kill you. So when we embrace these distractions, not only are we like someone driving with their eyes closed, we are actually flirting with spiritual death. We must remain committed to what we say we are committed to, because we must understand that the Creator is not going to force you to stay in the river. You can get off on the bank when you choose to. And we have seen a number of people who started with us on this journey, but they stepped out of the river. They got off on the bank because they saw fruit that impressed them. And they became word churches, and they became blessed and highly favored in the Lord. And they became all of these cliches that have no meaning except division. However, when we stay in the river, being highly favored does not cross your mind. You don't even think about that, because we realize that all of us are favored by our Creator, because our Creator is no respecter of person. Does that make sense? I'm done.
It does, yes. Okay. Anyone? Anything else? Any other questions or comments? Okay. I have something I want to look at, but I think this is a good place to pause, y'all. What do you guys think? Instead of going looking at something else. How do you feel? You want more, or you want to stop here?
A
Hey,
good place to
good morning,
pause.
good morning, everyone. Just one of the things that I want to add is, as it relates to bringing balance in the earth, just as a suggestion, we can't be the student all the time. Or I can't be the student all the time. And one of the things that I try to implement in bringing balance in the earth, when I trained at Pet Dairy, I was excited to train. And being excited to train, I also cared for the individual and cared for the individual's family. And once the individual finds out or buys into that you care about them, now they care about what you know. And now they want to know what you know. So if I'm bringing balance into this earth, I'm no longer the student. So just as a suggestion to everyone, in bringing balance to the earth, you're not going to always be the student all the time. If anyone don't understand what I'm saying, you can call me up and I'll break it down to you. But just know when you are leading, you're training, teaching, when a person care about what you know and they want to know what you know, it's a high reward and it's a very high penalty. Thank you very much.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. Every teacher is a student constantly. Every good student is a teacher. When you relate something to someone that you learned, you are a teacher. You never cease being a student. Even when we had the overnighters and I would sit there, excuse me, and answer questions for 24 plus hours. The whole time that I'm sitting there, for all of those hours, I'm excited because I'm learning. Every question teaches me something I didn't know. And every response that I give teaches not only the ones who hear it and embrace it, but it also teaches me. Because I have no clue as to what my responses are going to be. Because I have no clue of the questions you're going to raise. So it is it is totally impossible to be effective as a teacher if you are not an eternal student. And if you are not an eternal student, you are an ineffective teacher. And being an effective teacher speaks to how willing are you to learn, not just to talk, but to learn. Learning from the questions raised, learning from other people's responses to those questions, learning to the question about the question, and just sitting there pondering what's being said and learning from what has been said 6 weeks ago, but learning it right now because you desire to be forever student. So you'll be prepared to be a teacher when that opportunity presents itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, George. Anyone else? I think someone else was about to talk when George came in as well.
I had just responded to your question, Ron. But I think we're still gonna head forward, so I'm good.
Okay. I saw something in what we talked about last Monday, when we were looking at Abraham. And I said something and I never came back to it. I suggested that Abraham may have been responsible for his famine. And I know now that that is true. And I wanted to come back and kind of clear that up, and how it connects to Egypt is what I want to explain. And maybe I can do this briefly. And if you have questions, comment, maybe it's not so brief, but anyway, here we go. If you look at the journey, and again, Abraham represents, and as Audrey stated on the tape, yes, all of these lessons are connected. All of them speaks to us and the journey that we're on. Abraham, these altars are not just piling up of stones and preparing a place to stay, to pray, excuse me. The altars represents that space that you create inside of you, that place that you cleanse away and make room for you and the Creator to commune and to be one. The altar, if you look it up, it talks about a death. It talks about the shedding of blood. It talks about making a sacrifice. And that's what showed me the famine. The sacrifice is you. And the question that came up, and this kind of hit me last week, and this is kind of why I didn't go into it totally, because I didn't see it until here recently. My question that popped in my head was, what does your imagination have to do with the image and likeness of God? So what does your imagination have to do with you and what you see? So when you pull all this together, when you build that altar, there is something inside of you that's starting to churn. There is something inside of you that is moving to a place that you are not being familiar with. But it is you. It is not something that frightens you. You know that it is you, but it also is something that excites you because it is something new. So in building that altar and creating that space, what he sees is the Abraham or the Abram that he has built himself up to be, the Ronald that I have built myself up to be, is all a part of my imagination. It is not real. It is not true. It is not the true essence of who I am. So when I create this space, I'm seeing the more that is in me. And it isn't all making sense as in it's all coming together yet, but it is the beginning of that new journey. And I'm starting to pull all the pieces together. So the altar becomes that much more real. So you look at the places that he built there, because it talks about the heap or the perverted place being on one side of him and the house of God of Bethel being on the other side of him. So the heap is what my imagination is piled up to be. That's the imagination. That's the part of me that I have built. And the house of Bethel, the house of God of Bethel, is that new place that is in me that I see now that I'm ready to fill. So with that in mind, as I go down, suppose then that famine is when I recognize that in me, and I recognize that these things that used to satisfy me, these things that used to quench my thirst, if you will, or to make me feel I don't know, energetic or see myself empowered, that I recognize those things are no longer satisfying to me, and I recognize that I'm not who I thought I was, it becomes a humbling thing. So suppose then that the going down to Egypt is not just to the cramped space, but maybe the going down to Egypt is to conquer the cramped space. I recognize that I am the house of God now, and instead of letting that heat bother me, Abraham goes down to Egypt. He has intercourse with Pharaoh, and he conquers Egypt. He comes out on top. So maybe the Egypt part of us is showing that the oneness that we are, the oneness that you become, that internal part of you that you see, that you embrace, it embraces everything, the good and bad and the ugly. So you move from fearing things that you see with your eyes and the anxiety that you're fearing with your eyes. Maybe the Egypt is your focus of what your eye represents and who you are. And it shows you that if you maintain this focus, no matter how bad it is, no matter how evil it is, no matter what you see with your eyes, it doesn't matter, because you are one with it. And the oneness that you are, the vision of your eye and that uniqueness conquers everything, and it no longer becomes a cramped space to you, and it also becomes the pattern and the roadmap that others see when they latch on to and become the Abrams that they are. And I said that kind of fast because I guess I don't want to keep you too long. But does that make sense at all? If not, ask me a question, please.
It does, but I have a question, Ron. It makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
So isn't the altar your heart?
Yeah, you're seeing your heart, you're seeing your soul, you're seeing that you're seeing truth. You're seeing truth inside of you, and it lays. You see it in comparison to what you thought was important, what you thought was that image that you have built up before, that you thought was or defined you. So yes, it is indeed your heart. It's the true essence of your heart. Yes.
So instead of going to the altar every Sunday, going up to be prayed for or to bring a situation to the congregation, that's not necessary, because the altar is your heart. I guess that's where you connect with the Creator or God, Allah, whoever.
Yes, ma'am.
That's where you go to connect with them. That's why we are to meditate and do that
But see, here's the difference. In the church, in the religious manner in which we do it, we go up there to the altar and we see ourselves individually. There is no oneness in your thought. Once you start seeing with your eye, you don't see yourself as an individual. So when I go up to the altar in my church, I'm praying because my son is lost, or my light bill can't be paid, or my husband is gone, or whatever the case may be. But when I see myself as Elohim, and Elohim is me, and I recognize this journey, when I'm in this space, when I'm in this place of truth, that stuff becomes part of the catalyst that has helped me get here. It is not something that's going to stop me. It is not something that is going to be a distraction. So that is a different type of altar. That is something that is man-made, that has no power, that is not going to change anything. But the other one, what I'm describing, that place that you build inside of yourself, is what changes everything. It is the place where no matter what happens in the earth, take it back to the thoughts of being the nomad. I moved from this city. I moved from my father's house. I moved from all this stuff and this status stuff that has helped define me. And now I am everything that lives. I am the trees. I am the fruit that feed me. I am the fish in the brook. I am everything. I am the sound. I am the sunlight. And all of that is me. So you become one with all, and all becomes one with you. And all of it is yours. All of it is you. So go back to Nineveh. If you're seeing with your eye, we don't see that this is a Jew, this is a Gentile, this is a Hebrew, this religion says this. We are the ones that are responsible for all of it, and it doesn't matter what they say. So it puts everything in a whole different perspective. Questions or comments? Y'all tell me it makes sense.
It makes sense what you're saying. To me, I'm still processing though.
While we're all here together, then could someone else say it differently? Can someone else?
Honestly, I think it's clear.
Okay. And I hope it kind of falls in line with what we've been talking about.
It does, in that you are undergirding what we have what we all been talking about, and that is these are not people in the scriptures. These are concepts. These are principles. These are characteristics of Elohim that's being described, as well as characteristics of man, of mere men that are being described. So
yeah,
it is actually a contrast between the two. So we can see the path that we are on, as well as the path that we are to travel. So,
yes.
Wanda.
Thank you. Anyone else, questions or comments? Okay. Well, let's pause here then, and convene again tomorrow evening. And if you do, as you know, have questions or comments about anything, whether it was said today or in last week, please feel free to write it down or send a text, and we'll start off with that tomorrow. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care, family.
That's tomorrow.